Hi friends, it's Mrs. Bowers here. I hope you guys are all doing well. I miss you and hope that you are staying safe and healthy at home during this time. Today I wanted to connect with you and read you a story. So we have A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered, "but just look at me." "You get back into bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Oh, phew, Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny noses, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that she can use to help clear up those stripes. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." And sure enough, Camilla turned all into purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" And out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla, she was changing faster than you can change channels on the TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school's principal, called Camilla's mom. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask that you keep Camilla home from school. She is just too much of a distraction right now. I've been getting calls from other parents, and they're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. But she had been laughed at enough for one day. Yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mrs. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grope, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialists went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, taped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps, not the measles, and definitely not the chicken pox. Not sunburn. Try these," said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each before bed," said the doctors, and then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she didn't feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called him. But this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. They were the finest scientific minds in the land, and once again, Camilla was poked and prodded and looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers and then huddled together. Finally, one spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced, and suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or maybe some form of bacteria?" said the other doctor, and out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Maybe it's a fungus," added the other doctor, and instantly Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla and then at each other. "We need to go over these numbers again, back at the lab. We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. Poor Camilla. By now, the TV news stations have found out about Camilla, and reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out in the front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies, from psychologists and allergists and herbalists, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Even so-called cure-only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots, berries, crystals, feathers. Nothing was working. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said, "breathe deeply and become one with your room." "I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. Suddenly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse." At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door, and he opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What do we have here? This is a bad case of the stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here, these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. "Oh my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans." "I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck, no one likes lima beans," she said, "especially me." "Oh dear," the old woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she was going through. She finally couldn't stand it. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." I thought so," said the woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches fell, the feathers fell, squiggly tails began to disappear, and the whole room swirled around. And when it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head, and then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of the stripes again. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Have a good rest of your day.